All right, so are Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, are they meant to be? What is the synastry in their chart? I have, instead of doing a bi-wheel, I just did a dual wheel. We do have a verified birth time for Ben Affleck. We do not have one for Jennifer Lopez, so I did want to start out by sharing that clarity. Okay, so as you may know, I'm not going to go a whole run through about their relationship history. Perhaps throughout this reading, some things will become more clear. And so I will talk through all those things as well. So let's jump into it. So the first thing that stands out to me when I look at this chart is one, I always look for patterns in synastry first. Is there anything that's exactly the same? Then you will look for, is there anything opposite? If there's anything challenging in the chart, are there nodes? What contact do the north and the south node make? Especially when you start to ask questions about people believing people are soulmates or twin flames or situations like that. So the first thing that stands out to me is this Venus in Gemini, 18th degree of Jennifer, and a Saturn, 18th degree of Ben. Okay, because they're exactly at the same degree. Okay, and with Venus representing the relationship and Saturn representing long term commitment, Saturn representing time, it makes sense that these two would have eventually, reignited this relationship. Now, again, I can't say whether that would have happened if had it not been for Ben Affleck's divorce from his wife Jennifer Garner. But for those who need a little history lesson, Ben and Jennifer Lopez dated in the early 2000s, like 2002 to 2004. They broke up. He then starts dating Jennifer Garner, actress, and then they have three kids. They divorce. I'm not sure. I would have to look at when they divorced. But then him and Jennifer Lopez rekindle their relationship and get married in 2021. And now they are saying that they're headed for divorce. Okay. They are about to split up. So just wanted to, share that. Okay, so Affleck and Garner finalized their divorce in October 2018, according to People magazine. Okay, and a lot of people thought this was a work in the making. They were like, oh, people loved when Jennifer Lopez and Ben were together. It was like a, and I keep saying Lopez because there's two Jennifers, but for the purpose of the reading, for most of the time, we're going to be talking about Jennifer Lopez, okay? Is that they called them Benifer, right? And so it was a relationship that was highly profiled in terms of like Hollywood couples and things like that. So that Venus really stands out to me, especially through the 18th degree and the degree system that I use. I know not all astrologers, um, uh, prescribe to the same type of degree system, but I have a video on my other channel where I talk about the inspiration for it from a late astrologer, Nicola Stojanovic. But the 18 is considered to be like a Virgoan degree. It is like Virgo. So, but it's the latter Virgo degree from the 6 plus 12, 18. And so 18 can represent when you're willing to work on something. So this tells me that this is, they're willing to work on their problems. They were willing to work on their relationship. With this this exactly the same degree could tell me that they might have been in contact before they rekindled their relationship. And I'm not trying to insinuate that there was any type of like infidelity or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some level of contact, communication, even if it was just lighthearted, even if it was congratulating each other on certain awards or certain things in their professional life, because they also both have Mercury and Leo. I'll talk about that in a moment. But that's the first thing that really stands out to me is that Venus conjunct Saturn synastry between these two people's charts. Okay. Um, Obviously, they are both Leos. Okay. When you look at her degree, she's a fiery Leo. She's got Sun conjunct Mercury. She's got Venus in Gemini. So she is, she's got Mars in Sag. She's a fiery woman. Okay, Jennifer Lopez she's fiery. She's fiery. She's very active. She's very animated. Okay, which also speaks to like the things she does. She's acted. She's danced. Sung, all those different things. Whereas what type of Leo he is, he's 22nd degree Leo. He comes off a little bit more reserved in some ways. That also could be attributed to his Cancer rising. Okay, he is also a Scorpio moon. She is also a Scorpio moon, but I can double check. Let's look at this. She could be. Let me just double check the moon did not change that day, because if it did, that means it probably did. Look at that degree. That degree is very late. And again, the 6 a.m. is the default you use. When you don't know someone's birth time, the default that you can use is you can use 6 a.m. or 12 p.m. I'm checking right now to double check the moon cycle that day, because it is possible she could be a Sagittarius moon. Let's get the moon phase for that. July 1969. She could be a Sag moon. That would not surprise me at all. Let's look. All right, let's look. She was born July 24th. Yeah. So July 24th at 5:11 p.m. At 5:11 p.m., the moon did go into Sagittarius. So I wouldn't be surprised, Jennifer just seems like she seems to have like an optimistic view even on love. Again, like I've said before, I just talked about Megan Good, who's another Leo woman. I said Leo women tend to, they're just not afraid to go for it again. They're not going to stay crying for long. They're not going to stay, vengeful or anything like that. Now, again, if she has a Scorpio moon, that changes things a little bit more in terms of her attachment style. If she has a Sag moon, that changes things in terms of how she would be a little bit more like, I'm willing to let go, willing to let things be what they're supposed to be, being optimistic, viewing relationships as almost like an adventure. So we actually do not know, because we don't have her birth time, if she's a Sag moon or a Scorpio moon. I would not be surprised if she was born later in the evening, making her a Sag moon. Okay, but what we do know is we do know these other placements that she has. Okay, so again, she's a more fiery Leo than him. He's a little bit more reserved. He is a Cancer rising. He is a Scorpio moon. We know for sure his degree, and his Scorpio moon makes a trine to his ascendant. Many Cancer is a sign that people associate with acting, because it is the ability to channel emotion. It is, when you think of someone being able to show emotion in a scene, not everybody can do that. So, we do see that. I also think what's interesting in fifth house is I do sometimes see with entertainers, actors, actresses, singers, etc. There is some activity in the fifth house, which represents, talent, somebody utilizing their talent, somebody understanding their talents. Sometimes you can see 11th house, but usually with entertainment industry, you're going to see some fifth house. He has his moon in the fifth house, and he also has a Neptune in his fifth house as well. Okay. Now, when we draw back to this relationship piece, they both have Mercury in Leo. Okay. Now, when we look at his Mercury in Leo, it's at the 10th degree, it's in retrograde. He can have a little bit more difficulty in terms of communicating directly. But it's like he might struggle a little bit with getting things out in the way he wants to get them out. He can probably be good at what he wants to say in his mind, but just struggle a little bit with how he actually conveys that to another person, because he also has moon square Mercury, right? So it can also mean sometimes like he can come off okay when he's not. Moon in Scorpio, we know moon when it's in Scorpio is considered to be in detriment, because in fall, not detriment, because the moon doesn't rule Taurus. It is exalted in Taurus, the opposite sign of Scorpio. So the moon is in fall. So moon in Scorpio, it feels deeply, but it's not very expressive. It's not very open or warm energy. And so that moon squaring his Mercury can represent like he can come off a certain way. He can come off like he's okay about something when he's really not. Like those very deep feelings. In terms of the type of Mercury signs they are, both of Mercury and Leo, they probably do have fun together, have conversation. Now, again, the rumors are they're going to get divorced, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have a similar kind of communicative style. But her Mercury's at the 3rd degree. She has like a lighthearted way about her. Even when you hear Jennifer Lopez laugh, her laugh is kind of infectious or contagious. And I'm not saying this as a fan or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I'm objectively telling you what I noticed about her and him. His Mercury's at the 10th degree. Again, he can have like a different sense of humor than her, but again, Mercury in Leo is a sign that does tend to have this idea of like wanting to laugh, wanting to be, can like humor. Can also be ones that are very prideful in their ideas. His Mercury's in the 2nd house. Okay, he probably he doesn't like to like make decisions without thinking first how it is going to affect him. How is he going to come out in the end? Especially with that Sun conjunct Mars. So there is, the Sun's not really conjunct Mars. It's not really conjunct. It's just in the same house. Because those 22 and 0 degree are not close enough to be conjunct. Now, if that was a 29th degree Leo and a 0 degree Virgo, I'd call it conjunct. But with Mercury in the 10th, he is someone also that it might have been his idea for them to buy a house together. He has, they both have 4th house placements, but 2nd house can represent possessions and property. Fourth house can represent your home. So the rumor is also that there's something going on with their house. They bought a house together, but again, because of the divorce situation, it's likely that they're going to have to sell the house or something of that nature. So, his Mercury being retrograde, I think he could struggle a little bit more with direct communication than she. Because if we look at her Mercury, again, we don't have the degree of her moon to know if her Mercury squares her moon squares her Mercury like his, but we do know that her sun is conjunct Mercury. So communication and is just a part of it. Being just put it out there. She's the type of person that's like, say what you got to say, get it off your chest. He might be a little bit more secretive. He might be a little bit more secretive and kind of keep more of what he really feels locked behind. He also has Venus in the 12th house. Venus in 12th house people, one, his Venus in Cancer, which means, I am willing to, when I see Cancer energy in any chart, feminine energy shows up in terms of just the wanting to be in a relationship, wanting to be close to the feminine, close to women, something like that, even if it's people that just are really close to their mothers. So with him, I wouldn't be surprised if he is relatively close to his daughters. I don't know how many kids. He has 3 kids. Jennifer Lopez has 2, I believe, with her ex-husband, Mark Anthony. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ben is like really close if he has daughters. But also understand that like if this marriage ends, Ben Affleck will probably be dating someone again. The person he dates, could be considerably a little bit more younger. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes a little bit younger than him if he dates again. Okay. But I don't see him being single because I see this. Look at this. This Venus is at the 7th degree. Okay. Venus is in the 7th degree. 7 degrees of Libra degree. And it's not 19. 19 is a little bit more serious. 7 is like, I just like companionship. I like partnership. Problem is, could some people, not necessarily, again, this is for astrological and entertainment purposes. I am not purporting to know anything about these folks that hasn't already been reported. I'm just telling you what these placements show. And so since we know we have a birth time for him, Venus in the 12th house could mean a person who hides certain things in relationships, who sometimes there can be a lack of clarity, sometimes can just hide behind certain things, can be someone who even deals with situations of, sometimes you can see Venus with illicit affairs. I don't know if he's been rumored to have any affairs. Let me look real quick. I don't know. We're going to get into some other. Okay, let's look at this. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay, see? I think I heard about this, but I didn't remember. I just Googled, and it looks like there's an article from Yahoo saying that Ben was reportedly involved in an extramarital relationship with his and Jen. Jen meaning his former wife, Jennifer Garner. Jennifer Garner's family nanny, Christine Ozunian, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, in 2015, shortly before the couple called it quits on their decade-long marriage. Yeah, he was having an affair with their 28-year-old nanny. Yeah, I remember that. Okay, I didn't remember until I looked it up. Yeah, affairs. Not surprised. It's Venus in the 12th house. I'm not saying everybody with Venus in the 12th house is going to have an affair. But I'm saying with certain conditions in the chart, that could be a situation people end up, allowing themselves to get in. You also can look at the fact that, let's say, it's 7th degree. Venus is squaring his Uranus. Okay, that can mean extramarital. That can mean going out of the norm, going out of the range of your marriage. Now, with Pluto and Libra, especially if he in the 4th house, especially if he grew up with his parents being married, I don't know. I would have to look. But if he grew up, there was this kind of urge or seeking some type of like duplication of like wanting to be married. But it's like if he's having trouble in these marriages and having extramarital affairs, it's almost kind of like, well, sir, like, I don't know if you need to be married necessarily, or you need to have some different type of arrangement in these marriages if you're gonna do make it work. Okay. Whereas we look at her Venus is in Gemini. We don't know the house because we don't have her birth time, but Venus in Gemini is very flirty. It's very lighthearted energy. Jennifer is probably not the type that's going to go in an interview and start crying about this. Like when we look at her chart, we see she's probably someone that likes to keep a strong face about things. She wants to keep things light. She doesn't want to get into the specifics about everything that went on. She's probably really, really disappointed though. When we look at the fact of, let's look at her Venus. Is her Venus making any other aspects to any other planets? Let's see, we've got Gemini here. Venus in her chart is squaring Pluto. which can sometimes bring like obsessive relationships that are toxic or hard to get rid of, like hard to leave, hard to move on with something. She sometimes can have difficulties with that. There could be she comes off as stronger than she may feel inside, because she also has her sun squaring Saturn. Sun squaring Saturn, people can have a hard time with their authority, their power. They can have a hard time with understanding themselves fully in the sense of the things that they're here to achieve. She can view maybe relationships as something that she has to master. She's like, I gotta try this again. I'm gonna get this one right. And you know, I think though, if it's not the right relationship for her or him, I mean, people of course have the right to leave situations where nobody is happy or they've tried and it's just not working. She has Mars in Sagittarius, third degree. Okay, so that third degree is also making Mercury is trining Mars for her. Yeah, she's when she wants something, she goes forth ahead. She goes ahead, and she also tries to make sure the thing that she does is in line with what she believes, you know, what she believes in. She does seem to be a person who kind of believes in this idea of love. Now, whether she has like the rose-colored glasses or not, right, that is something you could debate. Especially we look at this fact, like, well, Venus is squaring Pluto. So now she could be overtaken or overpowered by this idea of concept of like love, or this drawn, this attraction to things that aren't necessarily in her best interest. I'm not saying he is or isn't, but I'm just saying that's what this astrology says. Now, their Mars placements are squaring each other. Mars in Virgo at the 0 degree is squaring Mars in Sagittarius at the 3rd degree. Mars squaring in a relationship means these people have very different ways in how they move. They move differently. They do things differently. And so what can sometimes happen is we see something like Mercury and Leo and say, oh, that means they're going to get along fine. They have the same Mercury sign. But it's deeper than that, because sometimes it can be too much. Because when you're the same as somebody, yes, at first it can feel great. We're on the same wavelength. But sometimes you do need a little bit of balance. And if Mercury and Leo is present in 2 charts, eventually somebody's going to want to be the one who's dominant verbally, dominant in communication. Somebody has to get the last word. So what will happen is they'll have a lot of fun together having those conversations. But when it comes time to an argument, Mars and Sag, she's going to tell him the truth. She's going to dish it out. Mars and Sagittarius can get a little bit petty. Okay? I wouldn't be surprised if some of this divorce gets a little petty in some way, shape, or form. But he's got Mars and Virgo. Mars and Virgo is very strategic. Mars and Virgo knows how to move in ways that are very logical. Mars and Virgo energy people are always looking for ways in which they can organize and arrange things in a certain way. So again, even though, you know, I wouldn't, again, even when we come down to talking about like the nanny situation, I bet you he was very, very sneaky about that nanny situation. All right? I'm surprised. Like, he thinks he's more logical than her. He thinks he knows she's fiery. And by fiery, I mean she's just a very direct person. She's direct. She doesn't hold punches back. And sometimes people can look at that as, oh, that person's not reserved enough. They're not disciplined in their emotions. But he's got that Mars and Virgo, because he's so methodical, because he tends to do things in a way that's very much planned, orchestrated even. He might think that about her. He might assume or have these assumptions that she is, you know, somebody who is, you know, she's not as regulated as him. But really for her, it's like she's just being direct. She's getting it off her chest. Also, we see here, let me see what else we see. He has Jupiter and Sag in retrograde. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about the addiction issue. Before I round this up and finish this off with talking about their Juno placements. Okay, so Ben Affleck, I believe, let me just double check about the alcoholism and like what, I think he went to rehab at some point. He was between, he was with Gwyneth, he also dated Gwyneth Paltrow. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, let's go. So there's an article published about him saying he tried to drink away the pain. He's on sobriety right now. Okay, but let's talk. So remember, he was one of Hollywood's, like, you know, leading men at one point. So how did he, you know, what in his chart might show us this addiction piece? Well, Saturn is considered to be, traditionally in astrology, Saturn was in its joy in the 12th house, meaning Saturn dealt well with Saturn. But remember, the 12th house also had to deal with, in traditional astrology, loss. And, you know, things that aren't in the open, restricted from society. And so 12th house, we know in traditional astrology, was about mental hospitals, institutionalized people, jails, prison, right? Things like that, which don't really make sense in the modern context if it's like everybody with 12th house placement is not in jail or in the mental hospital, right? Like, but again, there's deeper things in the 12th house. Go to my channel. If you're new to me and you're not following Amethyst Virgo Astrology, please go over there. I got a lot of videos over there where I talk about the rules of astrology. Okay, so Saturn and Gemini. I mean, Saturn in 12th house can mean a person who is really, Saturn and Gemini, how he deals with mental problems or mental issues or just being depressed is going to be through isolating himself. So that's number one. Venus can represent pleasure as well, right? So things we like. What we don't like is Venus. And so not only that, but look at this. His moon is trining Venus, which can be good in some ways. But also because it's like, I'm sure there's a part of him in relationships that is loving, that attracts women to him. But again, it doesn't mean it's okay to do what he's doing. If, especially with the nanny situation from his previous marriage, but we don't know really what's going on with Jennifer Lopez right now, except for they're rumored to be divorcing soon. Now, when we look here, this is what I'm seeing. Fifth house of pleasure, he has Neptune in Sag. Nothing wrong with Neptune in Sag, but sometimes it can represent a person who indulges too much in their fantasies and things that they want. So that can represent sometimes alcoholism. If I'm looking for somebody who has addiction issues, I'm not saying someone, like recreational use is fifth house usually. People that have really strong addictions, sometimes you can see 12th house, but it could be either. But he has both fifth and 12th house placements, and he is someone who has addiction issues when it comes to alcohol. Now, you could argue, well, what about people that don't? They might have some type of obsession or addiction in another area. It may not be alcohol, and maybe it's something that's actually beneficial. Like there's someone who has, they're obsessive with something, but it works in their life and it's not detrimental. So when you're talking and looking at like that excess, you also can look at his sixth house as also this alcoholism, because Jupiter and Sag, okay, Jupiter's in rulership. What's wrong with that? But Jupiter is in rulership, but his Jupiter is in retrograde. His Jupiter's in retrograde. So the sixth house of health, he has Jupiter. So Jupiter and Sag can mean, he is someone that maybe benefits from some type of belief system, faith. If he has something each day to strive for, he's probably in a better place. But also his Jupiter's in retrograde. So learning and understanding how to apply past lessons to help him tap into luck and fortune is something he likely will need to work on. And also look at that fact of that, well, it's not a clean opposition. Some astrologers would say it's too far apart, but within 10 degrees, I mean, let's call it what it is. A Saturn in Gemini opposing Jupiter in Sagittarius, and they are in the houses. You have the house of the daily life, the sixth house. Jupiter can represent excess, doing something too much, right? Drinking can be associated with spirits. Sagittarius can do things they like excessively, right? And then Saturn in Gemini. So that's ways in which maybe we could see that he, attempted to cope with his issues. Also, Mercury being a retrograde. So even if we go back to that, like when, Mercury's in retrograde, sometimes it's very difficult to fully process what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Now, again, he's Mercury in second. He's probably decent or has a good business acumen in terms of money, in terms of, keeping things that's his, also being good at negotiating probably. He has Capricorn on the cusp of seventh house. Saturn in Gemini, he's good at negotiating deals, but sometimes it could be deals that are more like he's always want to look for what's in it for him type of person, but a lot of people are like that. All right, again, this is just me quickly looking at the chart. I didn't really fully go into it. North nodes, his North node's in Capricorn, the seventh house. It's interesting that he keeps having these marriages, because it is like, North node Capricorn is a traditional element. There's a traditional element, but he also has to understand and find what he's seeking truly in a relationship, but also first seeking within himself, because it's like he keeps trying to find a way to be successful in terms of his relationships, but maybe part of it is success in his relationships comes from the way in which he honors them, in which he learns how to understand people better so that the relationship can be successful. Because that North Node in Capricorn, and North Node in the seventh house, he is his North Node represents, he's here to learn about how to be in a partnership. North Node in Capricorn, he's also learned how to be structured, how to be disciplined in a partnership. So, that is something, if he's not seeing that, if he's only relying on his South Node energy, his South Node in Cancer, first house, it can mean that he is not quite balanced within his North Node. Whereas with Jennifer Lopez, her North Node's in Pisces, diving into her dreams, creating the world she wants for herself, 22nd degree, okay, Capricorn. So creating the world that she wants for herself, creating a better sense of peace and understanding, something eventually she's going to have to, if she hasn't yet, maybe she has, really like design her life the way she wants and not the way other people may want her to be. Earlier on in her career, I'm sure she was getting told what to do. Who's a good look in a relationship to be with, what you should wear, what you should, right? And so, at some point she becomes more fluid in her decision making and not so anxious and high strung. She has a South Node in Virgo, which is conjunct Pluto. So that can represent obsessive qualities, obsessing over perfection, trying to be a certain way for society and for the masses instead of just being who she is. So that, again, and when I say that, I'm not saying that's who she is now. I'm saying that in general. So if maybe she's overcome that, and that's not an issue, but that is something I see there. They both have Chiron in Aries, which get in retrograde, which means they're constantly going to be learning lessons about independence until they figure it out. His 17th degree, he's got to continue to work on that. He's got a 17th degree, anything. You have to continue. And also 17 could be good as a motivating degree, Leo, but it's like the one that doesn't give up. But also she has 6th degree, which is a Virgo degree. So like really helping her understand like what, looking at things in a way that is more, looking at the details, looking at the finer print of things. Venus and Gemini, anytime you have Gemini energy, you can struggle sometimes with that. You also know that, that her Mars is squaring her, Mars is trining her Chiron, so that can also be helpful indicator. But I don't want to go into too much of Chiron aspects with Chiron. But Juno, lastly, her Juno is in Capricorn. That he has, Capricorn. He has his Juno. North Node in Capricorn. But they're not lined up. Like they're not. Her Venus is opposing his Juno. His Venus is opposing her Juno. His North Node is at a late degree Capricorn. Hers at an early degree Capricorn. But her ideal partner is somebody who works on themselves. Probably a man who is rather traditional in some way. Probably someone who is very dependable. Someone who does what they say they're going to do. Earlier on in life, when she was young, she might have met men who didn't really meet that. Saturn in Taurus also shows up to me that she is someone that has had to work hard. Now, I know people have their opinions on Jennifer Lopez and some people like her, some people don't. Some people think she's talented, some people think she isn't. But Saturn and Taurus people do tend to have that kind of coming from very humble means to be successful type of energy that they have to kind of push through. And I think she's kind of always at odds with trying to still be like, I'm Jenny from the block, remember the song, and like being relatable to the people, right? Being relatable as Puerto Rican from New York, where now she's a for decades she's been a Hollywood star, actress, and singer. So that's more of a personal thing. I'm not going to dive deeper into how she may experience that, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's still like a soft spot for her, trying to really idealize understand who she is now versus who she is, and not losing touch with where she came from, type of thing. Because I know people were trying to clown her recently for when she said what she would order from the bodega, and people were like, that's not how you order, that type of stuff. I'm not going to go right now to Mercury squaring Saturn, but she can be maybe kind of very biting with her words in a relationship. She's not one to play with. I think she's more direct than him, but I think he thinks he's more logical than her. I think he takes her passion or how she comes off as she's doing too much. But really with his chart, it's he's just more, he might mince his words more. He's more strategic. He's quieter about things. He broods. He's got 12th house energy, so he probably retreats back. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about his chart. There is a lot of, if I was looking at his chart just from birth chart, of course I would talk about the positive. Right now we're talking about a divorce. So, Juno and Capricorn, your ideal partner, he's communicative. Her ideal partner is communicative, and if she doesn't have that right now, that's definitely probably why. Lessons she's here to learn. She's here to learn from somebody who was communicative, but also someone who's a person of his word. He's dependable. He's trustworthy. He's not complicated. I think Juno and Capricorn is not complicated. It's not a complicated partner. Someone who's just a very straight shooter. His Juno is in Libra, conjunct his Uranus, which is interesting. And so he may, Uranus can represent unexpected situations. Unexpected situations could have been how he really learned his lessons in a relationship. I cannot vouch for right now whether they've learned a lesson or not. Juno is, I don't know, right? I'm not, right? She could have learned her lesson in her relationship 10 years ago. He could have learned his 4 years ago. I'm not here to say whether they, they've learned it or not. But that's what Juno represents. You're just here to learn this about relationships, to fully understand it. And Juno is not what you want sometimes. It's not what you think you want. It's what you need. So his Juno being in Libra can definitely represent like he's here to learn how to cooperate with somebody. He's here how to strengthen his relationship and his communication with a partner. Okay, he's here to deal with unexpected things without retreating and running away, but really understanding how to resolve things. How? Well, look at that. That connects back to his North Node in 7th house. Okay, so that's interesting. Now, if I was doing this longer, I would, if this was a birth chart reading, I might do something about his Juno opposing that Chiron. But this is what I see in a relationship. These are probably the likely dynamics. There are some things I probably missed or didn't go over, but again, I don't want this to be too long. And also, yes, there's so much contact with their charts. There's so much overlapping energy. Okay, they're both Uranus and Libra, Juno and Libra. There's so many overlaps within the chart. Mars and her Mars conjunct his Neptune. Can't keep each other away from each other. Really envisioning, probably longing for each other for a while after they broke up. I'm gonna just be clear, like not clear, but I'm gonna be honest in what my astrological opinion is. Like when you have contact like this, when you have when you have planets that are conjunct, planets making contact with each other, whether someone's in a relationship or not, people are gonna have some type of interaction with each other typically. It could be good, it could be bad. But that's what I see in this chart in terms of like their relatability, in terms of the areas that they probably have similarities, but also in the areas where there might be some contention of why this relationship, this marriage is on the rocks and why there are divorce rumors looming over them. Did I not do any? I hate this computer with a fucking passion. I hope I'm not doing all of that. Fucking wasting my time. What is your fucking problem? Give a fuck. I don't need this computer. It ain't even letting me control alt delete.